100 miles an hour, and a state trooper sees this car flying, and he decides that the sirens are whirling, and he's struggling just to keep up, and he finally gets to the Pope, gets to this car, pulls him over, and he is furious. Whoever this guy is who's abused his highway is going straight to jail. So he slowly walks over holding his pistol, knocks on the window and says, driver's license and registration. Now the Pope keeps his driver's license just inside his white cassock, and he slowly pulls it out, gets the registration, gives it to the state trooper. The state trooper looks at the driver's license. He turns ashen-faced and he says, wait here, I will be right back. He races back to his car and he gets on the walkie-talkie and he says, give me the chief superintendent, the highest supervisor of the state police. The guy gets on the line, he says, sir, we have a diplomatic incident here of such mega proportions that I have no idea how to proceed. And the chief of police says to him, what is happening? What's the emergency? He says, sir, I have pulled over a man who was going 100 miles an hour, but he is a VIP. And the chief of police says, but who is he? He says, this guy's big. He says, tell me who it is. He says, he's huge. He says, for goodness sake, who did you pull over? Tell me who it is. He's enormous. I've never met anyone so important in my life. The chief of police says, calm yourself and simply tell me who you pulled over. And the state trooper says, I have no idea who it is. But whoever it is, he's got the Pope as a driver. Okay, I know you've heard the story before. But as I sat at my table trying to figure out how best to offer my first vote of thanks, I wanted to communicate that I am nothing but a warm-up speaker for someone far more important. Because I have actually known the head of your school, Rabbi Safran, since I was a boy of about 11. I was a camper in Gan Yisrael in South Florida, and he worked in the camp. And so Rabbi Safran and I'm now 25, so we go back about 15 years. But Rabbi Safran then became the head of the Hebrew Academy of Greater Miami, where I was educated, or where I was not educated. This is before you took over the school, Rabbi Safran. It is the same school where my brother Bar Kochba, who's here tonight, got straight F's for fantastic. And it was there that Rabbi Safran really began to earn a national reputation throughout the Jewish Day School network as an educator of rare excellence. And the fact that he's now the head of your school for 9 years, which is how long he was at the Hebrew Academy, and he's about to spend more time at Hillel than he did at the Hebrew Academy, exceeding that record, just shows how you appreciate that reputation for educational excellence. So thank you very much for having me, Rabbi Safran. I'm very grateful. And that's all I came to say, so God bless you. And have a very good night. I also want to welcome my father who's here. Daughter, son-in-law, nephew, niece, and sister-in-law. My brother, Bar Kochba and Iris, are parents of 2 children at Hillel. So I want to start this little talk by asking for a tuition break on their behalf. If you can take $10 off, my brother didn't drink the wine tonight. What I will not do tonight, for those of you who fear it, is I will not talk about my congressional race in New Jersey, where I just won my primary, thank God. A lot of people ask me, why did you get involved in politics? It was to get away from shul politics. But because I met Eric Bauman, we have a VIP here tonight. Eric is, I don't have to look at this, I memorized it by now. Eric is the chairman of the Democratic Party in Los Angeles County and vice chairman of the Democratic Party in the state of California. Is that correct, Eric? And he's an MOT, he's a member of the tribe. And being in the Democratic Party is a phenomenal first step to entering the real party, the Republican Party. So God bless you, Eric. And Eric, Eric, when I am elected, I'm still going to remember you and take your phone calls, okay? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I was supposed to give a speech tonight about a book that I have been working on for a number of years. It is not Kosher Jesus, which has already been published this past January, and that created enough trouble. It is bad enough that I made Rabbi Safran's life difficult at the Hebrew Academy. I do not intend to do so while he is now at Hillel. But I was supposed to speak about a book that I'm writing that addresses the mother of all questions, why it is that the righteous suffer, why the innocent suffer. Truth be told, and I was even working on the book on the plane, because it's due for publication, and it comes from the years that I spent as the rabbi at Oxford University in England, where we had so many tragedies. So many young people suffered so much. But seeing the setup that we have, and it's getting a little bit chilly, I thought to myself that that's not exactly the best subject to discuss with you tonight. If, with your permission, I would actually like to change the subject to something that I recently wrote as a column that has led to a number of TV appearances. It is a theory that I've developed that might be more appropriate to sustain your attention given the setting and given how late the hour, etc. And that subject is, why are American women reading 50 Shades of Grey? Now I'm completely serious. Now notice the puzzled look on all the husbands' faces. 50 Shades of Grey, is that like a fabric? 50 Shades of Grey. Is that a new novel about the weather in the United Kingdom? I mean, 50 Shades of Grey, is that how the weather changed this evening from how warm it was just a little while ago to how cool it's become? If you're a man in the audience, raise your hand if you have heard of 50 Shades of Grey. Okay. All of you are liars. You're a bunch of liars. You are a bunch of liars. Now tell the truth. Okay, so about 10 men have heard of 50 Shades of Grey. Now the women, no lies, I want only the truth and nothing but the truth. If you are a woman in this audience, I'm not going to ask if you've heard of it. I know you've heard of it, but have you read... Wait, don't raise your hands yet, because you're all here from women, kids in a Jewish day school. How many people here are part of the Board of Trustees? How many Board of Trustees? A bunch of trustees? Is there anyone that can, like, fire me before I even begin? I'm just wondering.
I'm behind you, Rabbi. We're all good.
Because now that I know this trustees from the school, I really just want to talk about the Parsha of the week. It's Parsha Shlach this week.
Oh no, that's so bad.
If you are a woman in the audience, and no lying, you got to be honest. Even though you are outing yourself in front of all your friends, we will now know the kind of... Look, they've already sent the guy to cut the mic. They sent the guy to cut the mic. This happens to me every time I speak on this subject. If you are a woman, we'll ask two questions, just to make it fair. Raise your hand if you've heard of 50 Shades of Grey. Raise your hand. Why are men still raising their hands? For goodness sake. I assume there are some men here who are deeply in touch with their feminine side. They're still raising their hands.
Because they read it. Some of the men read it.
Some of the men read it?
This is Hollywood. This is Hollywood.
This is not New Jersey.
Okay, if you're a woman, raise your hand if you heard of 50 Shades of Grey. Oh, this... I'm not even speaking to this side anymore. Exactly. You guys don't tell the truth about it. You guys never heard of 50 Shades of Grey. Now, how many women have actually read 50 Shades of Grey?
Nobody's going to admit
Okay, there are 5.
Lauren, you're the only honest one.
My wife's the only one that read it? No.
Raise your hand if you've read Kosher Sex. Have you read Kosher Sex? Oh my God! I'm just in the company of religious virgins. I mean, does anyone tell the truth in Los Angeles anymore? Has this just become an artificial plastic culture where everybody lies? How many people are still awake? If you have not slipped into a deep, irreversible coma, raise your hand, for goodness sake. Okay.
No time.
I will speak about why women are wearing 50... Wearing... God, even I'm confused. I will speak about why women are reading 50 Shades of Grey, but I will do so, Rabbi Suffer, and I assure you, from a Jewish wisdom and values perspective, meaning I'll just talk about sex for about an hour and I'll throw something Jewish at the very end. No, I will speak about this from a Jewish values and a Jewish wisdom perspective to demonstrate the power of Jewish thought as it pertains to the most intimate subjects of life. So that all of us can see the importance of a Jewish education. And all of you, after I reveal to you the deepest secrets of a passionate marriage, all of you can open your wallets very generously and give your money to my campaign. I mean to Hillel, I'm sorry, to the Hillel, God willing, to support the school, because we need a new lunchroom and a new yard. And if I dare come back to Los Angeles, I come here once a month to visit my father and my brother and my sister-in-law, and if I come here next time and there isn't a new lunchroom, I'm gonna tell on all of you who read 50 Shades of Grey. I have your number. Okay, let's address the question. This was a Newsweek cover story, just a month ago. Newsweek did a cover story about this book that has become a publishing sensation. It has gone viral throughout the country. It has taken women, especially married women, by storm. It was parodied on Saturday Night Live recently, in their Mother's Day edition. And what Newsweek wanted to know is this. Women have tried for about 7 decades to be liberated from the suppression and oppression, depending on how you look at it, that they experienced at the hands of men. Remember, up until the 1920s, women couldn't even vote in this country. They didn't have suffrage. Women were paid less than men, significantly less. They were barely represented in higher education. Now all of that has changed. 60% of all college degrees are awarded to women. For those of you who are teachers, either at Hillel or anywhere else, you will know that in high school, the boys can't even compete anymore. People are mystified at how poorly the boys are doing in relation to the girls, even in subjects where the boys used to dominate, like mathematics and the sciences. 3 out of 4 of the last secretaries of state were women. And, get this, 3/4 of all divorces today are initiated by women. Women are choosing to be alone when they're not happy in their relationships. When we speak about the 50% divorce rate, the 50% divorce rate is not a marital phenomenon, it's a feminine phenomenon. It is the women who are leaving unhappy and passionless marriages. And then you have the fact that women seem to be experiencing life increasingly alone. 40% of all American women are single. And if you're a woman 35 and over, you've heard the famous statistic. It came from Ms. Magazine, from Gloria Steinem, going back to the 1970s. You know the statistic. If you're a woman 35 and over in America, you stand a greater likelihood of being in a terrorist attack than getting married. I have a friend who's a world famous author who had an apartment at Ground Zero on September 11, 2001. She went through the horrible attacks of 9/11, and a week later she called me up and she said to me, "Shmuley, let me get this right." She's 39. "Now that I've been in a terror attack, does that not mean that my bashert is just around the corner?" Women seem better off without men very often. I always tell this famous statistic. You know that married women are 25% heavier than single women. 25% heavier. This is true. You know why? Because the married woman comes home. The single woman comes home, checks what's in the fridge, and then goes to bed. while the married woman comes home, checks what's in the bed. I won't finish that. You'll figure it out on your own. Okay, so given that women today, if you haven't figured that out, your friends will tell you as soon as I finish. Given that women today are more liberated than ever, earning more money than ever, more educated than ever, here's the question that Newsweek asked in a cover story that has been debated by sociologists and relationship experts throughout the country. Then why is it that they're reading a book that's gone viral, where a young, single, attractive, highly educated female student voluntarily submits physically to a man? I'm sorry?
Giving it all away.
Well, what am I supposed to do? Give the lecture and give like little hints? Should we do like a dot-to-dot thing where people have to figure... Why are women reading a book where a woman that's what 50 Shades of Grey is all about, where a woman voluntarily submits to a man who can dominate her, which is the essence of the book? No one can figure this out. Everyone is asking this question. Newsweek magazine, a full cover story. If women only wanted to be a man's equal, and the war of the sexes is now over, given that women have superseded men on so many levels, you mean they're now fantasizing about being submissive before men? They want to submit? No one can figure this out. It has led to so many debates. The New York Times magazine had a massive spread with everyone offering their opinions. They were all inadequate. Read the Newsweek cover story. You'll see all the answers were inadequate. Everyone who's attempted to answer this question has failed. Until now. Because tonight, we will answer that question. But before we do so, I want to know if there's any... We'll take 3 attempts. They have to be short, though. 3 attempts on the part of a man or woman to answer the question. If women want to be the equals of men, and sometimes perhaps even the superiors of men, why are they obsessing over a book where they surrender all independence to be submissive before a man? It makes no sense. It's almost like everything they strive for was in vain. Anyone? Okay, thank you very much.
No.
Thank you for those insights. I greatly appreciate it. I'm glad you guys have thought deeply into this. We have one. Okay, go ahead, please.
Well, really what it is that women want to be right. And I haven't read the whole series, but I do know at the end, the woman is right. She gets the guys to agree to that she's right. So that's the whole...
Is that book 3? Because I've only finished book 1. He's just giving away book 3.
I haven't read the whole thing, but I do know that's what happened.
Of course you haven't read the whole thing. We know that. You're speaking about the friend of yours who read it and told you. We understand. We understand. Well, when your friend read it on your behalf and told you this, so it's because in the end the guy falls in love with her, that's the reason? And she marries her or something and...
Yeah, they got everything she wants in the end.
What?
I was the friend that told Liz.
She has to change the guy.
She has to change the guy?
She has to change the guy.
Oh, so women are reading it because they start submissive, but ultimately they get power over him. Is that the reason? Hey, it takes you got to get to book 3 for that. Book 1 is the big seller. Come on. Come on. Anyone else? One more explanation. Do women secretly fantasize about being submissive before men? Do they secretly fantasize that they don't want any kind of equality? That it's some sort of burden? You know, Newsweek's answer was almost preposterous. This is the second biggest selling news weekly in the country. Newsweek said the reason is that women have so many responsibilities today. They have to take care of kids, have a second job, look after the domestic responsibilities, that they fantasize about a guy ruling over them completely to absolve them of all their work. The stupidity, the insipid, shallow stupidity. You know what my response to that was when I was asked by one of the television interviewers said to me, do you agree with Newsweek's answer? I said, if that's the reason, she can just get another maid, for goodness sake. She can get a housekeeper. Okay. In order for me to explain the answer to this great mystery, I need to pick all of your brains about something very simple called the Ten Commandments. There's something unique in the Ten Commandments that we almost never focus on, that teaches us the greatest secret of marriage, that is so counterintuitive. It is so contrary to what we're told marriage is based on that we all overlook it. Okay, does everyone know the Ten Commandments?
Yeah.
What is the 10th commandment?
Don't covet.
Do not, okay, give me the whole thing. Do not covet.
Your neighbor's wife.
Do not covet your neighbor's wife. They had a lot of wine at this table. The 10th commandment is, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Thou shalt not lust after thy neighbor's wife. A few years ago, there was a story here in the United States of a Christian woman who started doing Avon-style parties for other Christian married women in Texas, where she was selling them things like lingerie and things to spice up marriage. She was arrested on Texas indecency laws, if you remember. It was a very big story. But more importantly, more relevant to my radio show, she was expelled from her evangelical church. The pastor said that she was doing the devil's work and she was expelled. I had her on my radio show with the Reverend Flip Benham from Concord, North Carolina, who is nationally famous because Flip converted Norma McCorvey, the woman whose Roe v. Wade decision made abortion legal in the United States. Norma McCorvey was not religious at the time when she wanted to have an abortion. She converted to evangelical Christianity. Today she's one of the biggest advocates against abortion, and Flip converted her, so he's very famous. I said to Flip, what did this woman do wrong? Why was she kicked out of her church? And Flip says to me, Shmuley, I can't believe you're asking that. This woman is promoting lust instead of love. I said, Flip, what's wrong with lust in marriage? He said, Shmuley, I feel sorry for you. I even feel more sorry for your wife. You're turning your wife into an object of lust. That's disgusting. I said, Flip, the Bible endorses lust. He says, where does the Bible say that? You don't know your Bible. I said, what is the 10th commandment? Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, which means by direct implication that you sure as heck ought to be coveting your own wife. Or it would have said, do not lust after any woman. Judaism believes that not love, but lust is the most powerful force in the universe. We have all been fed a lie which is destroying our marriages. The lie is that marriages are supposed to be based on love, when really marriages primarily are based on lust. I recognize that this is such a radical idea that almost no one here would agree with it. So let me begin to demonstrate my point. Do you know that 80% of men who cheat on their wives claim to love their wives? And they do. I sit with them. I counsel them. How could a man who claims to love his wife, 1 out of 3 men are unfaithful?
Wow.
The other yeah, just count the third person at your table.
It's the other table.
1 out of 3 husbands are unfaithful. The other 2 out of 3 are on Viagra. Okay. 1 out of 3 husbands are unfaithful. I sit with these husbands, and studies show that 78% of them claim to love their wives. Then how could they cheat? Because lust is much stronger than love. And we have decided to build the institution of marriage on the much weaker force of love rather than the nuclear force of lust. Now, I admit that in the long term, lust will always lose out to love. In the same way, a sprinter can't really stand a chance against a long distance runner if the race is for 10 miles. But in the short term, lust will always beat out love. And that's why Judaism as a religion is unique among the thought systems of the world in inculcating lust in marriage. Lust in marriage. How do we know that marriage is built on love? And I'll begin to distinguish between the two now. How do we know that marriages built on love don't work? My friends, you know why there's a 50% divorce rate? It's not because divorce is strong. It's because marriage is weak. The essence of a marriage is desire. You're supposed to want each other. You're supposed to pine for one another. You're supposed to hunger for each other. Sama lacha nafshi. My spirit thirsts for you. We sing it every Friday night as we bring in the Sabbath bride. Ki ze kama nichsaif nichsafti. How long have I yearned and hungered for you, O Lord? Rabbi Safran and I are Chabad, and we've learned Chassidus constantly about something called Kalais HaNefesh, where the soul so yearns for God that it's ready to leave the confines of the earth in order to be reattached to God. We're supposed to experience passionate, ecstatic desire. That's what Judaism is supposed to be. It's supposed to be an experience of passionate, ecstatic desire, not mitzvahs anashim ulumada, not someone who goes through the motions by rote, as some automaton, as a robot that bores our kids to death in Jewish day schools through a religion that feels to them to be coercive, and they can't wait to get out of school because they feel it's all about pressure. It's supposed to be about desire. Our relationship with God mirrors our relationship with our spouse. Lust is the essence of a relationship, and that's why Judaism cultivates it. And I'll prove it. The holiest book of the entire Bible, 24 books of the Tanakh. What does the Gemara say is the holiest book of the entire Tanakh? Shir HaShirim, the Song of Solomon. Has anyone here ever read it in the English? The Sephardim read it. Beautiful custom. Every single Friday afternoon, as Shabbos comes in, the Sephardim read it in shul. Unfortunately, we Ashkenazim, I'm Sephardic, but I've developed these Chabad customs. And my father, I should be true to my Iranian origins. My father was born in Isfahan, Iran, which today is unfortunately the center of the Iranian nuclear. Isfahan might be taken up by Israel any day. The Sephardim have this beautiful custom of reading Shir HaShirim every Friday afternoon. Have you ever read the Song of Solomon, which the Talmud calls the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies? It's the story of a man and a woman who don't love each other. They lust for one another. They never even meet. They're constantly missing each other. They catch each other's fragrance. Because the essence of lust, as Plato famously said, is that when lust is satisfied, it immediately disappears. That's why we call a relationship based on constant yearning and hunger a platonic relationship. Interestingly, today platonic means a sexless relationship. But in Plato's time, it meant one built on constant yearning. Because it's never satisfied, never satiated. Now you begin to understand the essence of the Jewish marriage. Whereas the Christian marriage is a sacrament based on love, and sex is for procreation, the Jewish marriage is a form of ecstatic connection based on lust. Why does the Torah say that a man cannot have his wife for 12 days out of every month? So that he must lust after her, since he can't have her. Indeed, there are 3 great rules of lust that go contrary to love. The first rule of lust is, in fact, you have to help me here. Here's the first, there are 3 rules of lust as opposed to marriage. Here's the first one. But you got to help me here. All the men. You're at
Communication.
You're at Santa Monica Beach. You're walking and you see all of these tons of women in bikinis. Gentlemen, is that a sexy scene? Is it a sexy scene to see women in bikinis? The president of the school is saying perhaps. He's saying perhaps. His wife just hit him. Now he's saying no. Okay, is it sexy to be at a beach filled with women bikinis? Yes, it's sexy. But here's the second question. Is it erotic? Is it erotic? And the answer? Of course it's not erotic. How do we know that a beach is not erotic? Because what do men do at a beach? They either play frisbee or they fall asleep. It's so erotic. Okay, now you're walking home from the beach and a woman left the blinds to her bedroom open and she's walking around in the same amount of clothing that she did at the beach, but it's not a bathing suit. Now it's her undergarments. Gentlemen, is that sexy? It's sexy. Is it erotic? Can you imagine a man seeing a scene like that? A woman leaves the blinds to her bedroom open, and now he's a peeping Tom, and he suddenly thinks, my gosh, if only I had a frisbee! Where is the frisbee? Now why is the second erotic? Help me, come on. This is the first rule of lust. Thank you very much. We got an expert here. You ought to teach a course in this at Hillel. When you go to a beach, no matter how many women are walking around in a bikini, it's boring because they are wearing something designed for you to see. But when you are on a beach and people are seeing something that is forbidden, that's the first rule of lust. What is the first rule of the Jewish marriage? Judaism makes a wife forbidden to her husband. That is the craziest idea you could ever imagine. The essence of marriage is its legality. The essence of marriage is that you are in a sacred bond. How could she suddenly become forbidden? Because Judaism is cultivating lust in the relationship. What is the second rule of lust as opposed to love? What's the second rule? The second rule of lust is that lust is built on... Here, who has an iPhone? Thank you. You also gave me your cards and your wallet. I appreciate it.
Vegas sandwich.
Steve Jobs took this phone and made it the most successful product launch in the history of the world. There are two things that he understood about marketing. I mean, it's a good product, but they say the Google phone is better. That's what they say. I don't work for Apple. How did he market this so brilliantly? He understood the two other rules of lust. People didn't want an iPhone. They lusted after an iPhone. They stood in line for days and hours to fork over their $500 to Steve Jobs because he understood two things. Number one, he made it impossible to buy. Who's ever heard of a product that you can't buy? What most companies do is they flood the stores with their product and it stands in big heaps and you go and you buy it. Here, a friend of mine is the manager of the Big Apple store on Fifth Avenue in New York. It is the highest grossing retail store in the entire world, except for Macy's. I'm not talking about based on its footage. Second highest grossing retail store in the world. You know what he told me? When the iPhone came out, same issue with the iPad, they put 300 a day in the store on purpose. They wanted those lines. They made it impossible to buy. So the first thing Steve Jobs did is he made the phone impossible to obtain. And number two, Apple, unlike every other company in the world, never reveals what they're developing until the day it comes out. I don't know. I didn't see today was an Apple Developers Conference. I don't know what they announced. But Boeing is about to release their Boeing 788. They announced it in 2002. And it's still not out. What are the two, thank you very much, I'm not going to keep this. What are the other two rules of lust? A, frustrated desire. You cannot have what you want. Frustrated desire. Which is why fast food restaurants always taste bad, because you get what you want instantly. And good restaurants make you wait even if you order the special of the day where it's piping hot in the kitchen. And the second rule, mystery. 3 rules of lust: forbiddenness and sinfulness. Frustrated desire, or what we relationship experts call the erotic obstacle. The obstacle that frustrates your desire. Number 3, mystery and hiddenness. The Great Gatsby is the most romantic novel ever written. And it's all about a man who wants to have a woman, and no matter what he tries, he cannot get her. They only meet at the very end, Daisy and Jay Gatsby, and then all of the desire is lost. And it ends on a very depressing note. The essence of lust is sinfulness, frustrated desire, mystery. Now you know why Judaism says that women dress modestly and their bodies are covered, to cultivate mystery. Now you know why men and women in a shul always have a mechitza, so that men and women, there's always a barrier. In Judaism, there's always a barrier between men and women. That men should never grow so accustomed to women that love begins to replace lust. They must coexist. That's why we say, my lover, my friend. The perfect marriage is where you have the twin qualities of lust and love. Someone that you pine for and hunger for, and someone with whom you share a life. And they cannot coexist. One is a fiery love, lust. The other is a more watery love. So Judaism splits it into 2 periods of the month. Now, since lust has been killed by a world that respects no modesty, since lust has been killed by a world where there's no mystery, since lust has been killed by a world where there is total familiarity between boys and girls from the earliest age, which is why, by the way, I have always been opposed to coeducation. I'm opposed to coeducation. In my congressional race, I'm opposed to coeducation. I've always been opposed to coeducation. I'm always opposed to the familiarity that develops between boys and girls, which, by the way, in my opinion, leads to misogyny among boys. I wrote a book called Hating Women. It's amazing, if you guys were able to read text messages among young boys at school, how often they use the B word about girls, and the kind of misogyny that develops from an early age, it's troubling. And one of the reasons is, there's such familiarity that boys become experts in girls, and they start comparing them constantly. And if girls don't do what they want in high school, she's a stupid bitch who didn't give me what I want. It's amazing. I charted it all with real research in the book, published by HarperCollins, available fine bookstores everywhere. In a world where sex has lost its sanctity, in a world where there's constant sexual familiarity and availability, in a world where there's no mystery, no woman today knows what it feels like to be lusted after. And now you know the secret of why they're reading 50 Shades of Grey. Because the book is really about a man who wants a woman for lustful purposes so much that he will do anything to get her to submit. And she will go along with it just to be the object of that lust. That's the secret of the book. No woman knows what that feels like anymore. Why are women fantasizing and reading a book about total submission before a man? Because no woman knows what it feels like to have a man desire her that badly. In a world where porn has become 70% of the internet, 70%. In a world where porn grosses $100 billion a year, and all of Hollywood out there grosses only $12 billion a year. In a world where we husbands have developed so many distractions, where the essential rules of the Jewish marriage have been so compromised by a culture that doesn't respect Jewish wisdom, women are now reading a cheap, poorly written, third-rate pornographic novel just to experience what it's like to feel that level of desire. It's not about love, it's about desire. It's about that ecstatic desire. And you know what? These days I feel we only feel that level of lust for material objects. I was speaking to a guy whose life was falling apart, and he had spent so much money, and his wife said, get him to stop spending money. And he was about to buy this new expensive sports car. I said, do you really need it? He said, I'll die without it. I'll die without it. My friends, a Jewish education is not where we stick our kids in front of a Jewish book and teach them how to read the Aleph Beis. A Jewish education is not where we get our kids to daven Shachas and Mincha before they go home. A Jewish education is not where we teach our kids how to put the 7 bindings of the tefillin on their hands and on their hearts. A Jewish education is where we get our children to hunger for God, to make God something they hunger for more than the stupid car at 16, more than Dolce & Gabbana on their tuchus, more than an iPhone, more than an iPad. And any Jewish education that fails to inculcate that level of desire for the Eibishter, for God, as their constant companion, has failed. We are not Jewish because we're part of a people, because Judaism matters, because Judaism without God is an empty faith. And it's the kind of education against which children will rebel. Why do you think the Kabbalah movement is so popular? What does it offer already? Disembodied spirituality? What's it grounded in? But it's popular because it's emphasis on reaching, yearning, thirsting for something higher. Our kids are tired of the materialistic garbage. They're tired of the junk. They're tired of the fancy watches and the fancy fashions and the big homes. They're sick of it. And we're killing them with this garbage that has come to supplant God in our lives. That's why women are reading this book. The husbands think, if I give my wife all the credit cards in the world and all the clothing, she's gonna be happy. It turns out, no, she won't. People want to be the object of desire. The Jewish people have made money to do good things with their money. We don't make money as an end, we make it as a means to an end. The Rambam summed it up brilliantly in the Shmona Prakim. He asked, how does Yaakov, my bar mitzvah parsha, say to God, if you give me food and clothing, I'll make you my God. But if you don't, the Rambam says, was he going to abandon God? And the Rambam answers brilliantly, he said to God, give me money and food and clothing so that I can make you my God. If I have money, I can afford school tuition. If I have money, I can have guests on Shabbos. We must place God back at the center of our Jewish lives and show that we have a relationship of covetousness with Him. The more spiritual you are, the less materialistic you are. And growing Jewish materialism, evidenced above all else in the kind of vulgar bar and bas mitzvahs we have today, which usually are nothing but some sort of demonstration to our friends how much cash we have, and our kids see right through it. It's an a priori demonstration that spirituality is not pervading our lives. That's why tonight, and I get nothing for saying this, that's why tonight you have to demonstrate to your kids that the reason you made money is to ensure that that school looks better than your home. That that Jewish day school looks better than your home. That if you have a big backyard but your kids don't have a playground to run around, there's a problem with that equation. That if you have a giant brand new dining room and kitchen but your schools looks like a big piece of crap, there is something wrong with that equation. Because a Jewish day school has to look like something glorious. A kid has to feel that this is where Jewish resources go. My friends, do yourselves one favor always. Do yourselves one favor always. Make sure that you show that the blessings that God has given the Jewish people after the Holocaust. God willing, at a different time, I will give the lecture I was supposed to give about how does God allow so much suffering in the world? But we Jews can't say that we've suffered, thank God, most of us, a great deal. People have suffered, but for the most part, the Jews have been prosperous since that terrible cataclysm that took 1 out of 3 Jews 70 years ago. Make sure that we show that the blessings God has given us is consecrated to a higher cause. It's consecrated to tzedakah, to kehillah, to our communities, to tefillah, to Torah. Because if you do that, you will have the greatest blessing of all, I promise you. There is no blessing in the world like upstanding children. Nothing. I promise if you make all the money in the world, but you have kids you're not proud of, or have behavioral problems because they have bad values, you will have little nachas from your life. But if you, even if you don't have a lot of money, but if you have the most amazing kids who treat people with respect, who daven with kavanah, who learn and get you to learn, my kids have gotten me to learn more Torah. My kids, they have gotten me to learn more Torah. I had the great honor 6 days ago of sitting in a private meeting with the Prime Minister of Israel, who the day after I won my primary invited me for a meeting, and I brought my daughter who's serving in the IDF. And she's 21 years old. And I've known the Prime Minister since he was the Deputy Foreign Minister, like 25 odd years ago when I first hosted him at Oxford. He remembers her when she was a little girl. So he says to her, At Misharetet? You're serving in the army? So she tells him where she's serving. And then he says to her, why? Why did you leave the States to come in? And even I was skeptical about it. Not all religious girls go to the army. There's a lot of questions about these things. But my daughter was insistent. My daughter said to Prime Minister Netanyahu, she said, I felt that American Judaism was lacking sacrifice. It was lacking sacrifice. That the Jews of Israel, they had to sacrifice something to be Jewish. They had to fight for something. And that, it made me more passionate. I said to the Prime Minister, you know, in this congressional race, Eric, I know that you said you followed my race quite closely. You know that in the Pasquale-Rothman race, there was a big Democratic primary just before the day that I won the Republican primary. There was a Jewish, very pro-Israel congressman running against someone who's not as pro-Israel, and the pro-Israel guy lost big time. And one of the things they accused him of, a lot of the Arab residents in we have a large Arab community, was that his votes for Israel were a form of mistaken loyalty, that he was loyal to a foreign flag. This was a big national story. So I said to the Prime Minister, you know, if Rothman, 8-term congressman, 16 years in the Congress, was accused of dual loyalties for voting for Israel aid by residents of my district, what are they going to say about me, who has a daughter serving in a foreign army, serving in the military? So Netanyahu says to me, tell them, in my name, you can quote me, and we put out a press release with his name, tell them that your daughter serving in this army protects the United States of America. To tell them that I said that anyone who fights for Israel is fighting on the front lines of freedom. Because my daughter felt, and it shames me, because I didn't always feel this way. My daughter felt that if you're Jewish, you have to sacrifice something. And let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if I'll win this race. I hope I will, God willing, with all due respect, my esteemed Democratic colleague. I will tell you that the joy that I got in seeing my daughter speak to an Israeli Prime Minister as a soldier in the Israeli army, it doesn't get better than that. Raising good kids, it doesn't get better than that. That's what it's about. And that's why you're here. You're here to support quality Jewish education so you could raise good kids. So you could raise good kids who hunger for their Judaism, for whom it's a passionate, lustful experience. They daven with kavanah, and you're amazed because you know you once felt that. I look at my kids coming home from Israel in the yeshivas, and they come back with so much passion, and it reminds me of what I once felt. Even it's become more routine for me. And how do we daven in the shuls these days? Is there any lust for God in the We talk, and the rabbi has to stop 10 times, and they start laning, and they stop laning because we're bored. Let's admit it, we're bored. At the very least, let the kids go through that passionate time. At the very least, let them inspire us with their passion. I don't know as much about Hillel, let me conclude, as I should, but I do know the following. The Harcum family I've known since I was 19 years old in Sydney, Australia, with the Lubavitcher Rebbe sent me as a student emissary. Uri and Ephraim and Menashe Terry in Sydney and Ben. I used to study with Ben Harcum when I was 19. We studied every Sunday together. We studied Tanya together. I've known the Harcums since I was 19 years old, and Ephraim, who owns this hotel, who I understand is in Dallas, is one of my dearest friends in the whole world. He's an incredible man, and it's amazing that the Harcum name is on the school. I also know that under Rabbi Safran, you know, if you're Chabad and you become the head of two of the best-known Jewish day schools in the United States, you got to be damn good, because everybody starts with this, oh my God, a fanatic is coming to take our kids. Our daughters are going to have beards down to their waists. So if you're Chabad and you can lead two of the best-known Jewish day schools in the United States, you got to be darn good, because you start a little bit behind the pack, a lot of suspicion, etc. So I know that you're in very good hands with Rabbi Safran. And finally, my fourth ending. I know you're in very good hands. And I know this is a school that has to be supported because, My daughter's one of your teachers. I mean, come on. So, and Mushki, that is a form of obligation, I assure you. Because Mushki and Arik are only married 7 months now? 7 months. People said it wouldn't last, so thank God. That was a joke, that was a joke. Okay, I want to thank everyone for having me. God bless you. Stay in touch. Rabbi Shmuley is my handle on Twitter. Shmuley@shmuley.com is my email address. Shmuley.com is my website. God bless you all. Thank you very much.